Hello and welcome to Community Report. I'm Vicki Prichard. Victory of Light Expo is coming up and we have some wonderful guests with us here tonight in the studio to talk about it. Victor Paruta is here with us, Kenn and Jean Jackson are here, all with their wonderful accoutrements. And we'll be talking more about that a little bit later. But Victor, first give us an overview about this terrific expo. I know every time it comes up, we have you on the show to talk about it, but each time you have something wonderful to add to it. There are new faces and interesting areas to cover.
Yeah, my job is to keep the expo fresh and new. So I always try to change it a little bit, change it up, give people who attend regularly a whole new experience. And this is the 23rd year of the Victory of Light Expo.
Is that right?
And this will be our largest show ever. We took our seminars, which is a big highlight of the expo. We usually have 60, and now we're up to 85 for this show.
Wow.
And so this makes the Victory of Light Expo the region's most affordable and expansive place to learn about metaphysics and spirituality. So if you're interested even a little bit in developing your psychic abilities and your sense of spirituality, or if you want to get a psychic reading or experience one of the free readings that we have at the expo through the seminars, it's the place to be. And it's the weekend before Thanksgiving, November 22nd and 23rd, from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the Sharonville Convention Center.
And you do this, it's twice a year. There's a spring event and then the fall event as well.
Right.
So it continues to grow. You do this twice a year, the numbers increase. What do you attribute that to?
Well, obviously there's a desire within the community for something deeper as far as a sense of meaning to people's lives. You know, people tend to get into, the routine of going to work in the morning and taking care of their families and paying bills and going to the grocery store. And they have these nagging questions. Is there more? What's the meaning to my life? Why am I here? What happens after we die? And so in the realm of metaphysics and the paranormal, which is beyond the normal or beyond the physical, and that's what Victory of Light allows people to explore, not just to sit in on a lecture, which is great because a lot of the lectures are experiential, where you get to actually experience something like a past life regression to see who you may have been in a previous lifetime. But you can also get a psychic reading or a healing, and when you experience something, it's a lot different than hearing about it. And it changes people's lives. Not only that, as far as a good place to learn, it's fun. I mean, we have live music throughout the weekend. We have an art gallery this time for the first time. We've got visionary artist Aaron Pine. We've turned part of the convention center into a fabulous art gallery. His artworks are 6 by 6 foot. They're huge. And so it's going to create a great environment to sit and contemplate some of the spiritual images in Aaron's artwork. But people can come and spend the whole weekend because we've got great food, free parking, 12 and under for children, it's free. And the admission price is really reasonable for what you get. So a lot of people who've been there for the first time, they come on Saturday, they haven't been able to see everything there on Saturday, so they come back on Sunday. I'm really proud of what Victory of Light's become over the years. You know, it's evolved into something really special. And I'm not only proud of that, but I get to hang out with people like these gentlemen, and they get to share their gifts with the community. So it's a great place to find out what's available here in our region.
Well, I know we're always excited when it takes place, and we always love having you on the show to talk about what's going to be there, and we thought it would be just a terrific opportunity to bring some of those folks into the studio, so we're thrilled to have both of you here. Jean, I'm going to start with you. You're known as the Crystal Guy, officially, correct? Talk about how you came into this area of study and interest.
Well, I got out of the Marine Corps in 1988 and was driving cross country on a motorcycle and crashed into the side of a pickup truck. And in that after that near-death experience, I'm laid up with my arm in a cast, my mouth wired shut, and old biker gave me a quartz crystal about that big and said, "Here, this will help in your healing." I'm like, "Oh, sure." I thought it was just going to help my arm heal faster. I didn't care. And next day, a girl came in who had been beaten up by her boyfriend and hit so hard in the face. Her jaw was busted like mine was. It was wired shut like mine was, and she was looking to get drunk enough to kill the pain. I reached in my pocket, pulled out the crystal, didn't think about it, and I took the pain away that fast.
Just holding the crystal up to
Next
her.
to her face, I didn't know what I was doing. I just felt my heart to do this, and I did that, and it freaked her out, it freaked me out, and I've been on a journey of learning from doing it ever since.
Where did you go from that moment then? Did you start studying, or did you reach out to people who knew more about crystals?
Places like, I was in Illinois at the time, so I would hang out at a local metaphysical bookstore and read as many books as I could, and then suddenly realized I did more with working with the stones than I did with reading, but I read voraciously for a while and looked for my path, and kind of came through just hanging out with the crystals and working more with the crystals, and learned to use them in healing for myself and then for others.
And you mentioned hanging out with the crystals, but you really have an impressive collection here. So when you're hanging out with them, these are crystals from all over the globe,
Yes.
really. Where do you begin in terms of acquiring these?
You can get them at the Victory of Light.
Sure.
It's a nice place to start. But
Where did you start?
I started with, I wound up at the Tucson Rock and Mineral Show, which is the largest show in the world that happens in Tucson every year. And it was a wholesale show, and I wound up there as a vendor. And I had a backpack full of crystal wands I made, and like basic wire wrap jewelry, and sat there and rented this much table space for $5 a day. And everything I would sell, I would use to buy more rocks. And I just kept on buying more rocks with whatever I sold, and I have been doing that for about 30 years.
Okay, all right. Ken, talk about, you are a post-tribal shaman, and that's a very distinct coinage that you have that you came up with. You have the trademark for that, I believe, the post-tribal
Well, if it is
shaman.
trademarked, it
It's
better be
yours,
mine,
right?
yes.
Talk about that, about your experience.
Well, I started off, as I think a lot of people do, getting into shamanism with a situation where, for myself, I was diagnosed with acute post-traumatic stress disorder by the early 80s. And I tried therapy, I tried drugs, none of it really seemed to work. And so I was desperately looking for something, anything that would really make a difference, because life was awful. And now life is wonderful. And it took a lot of learning by doing, as Jean was saying. You know, I hang out with the spirits. I was fortunate that in the midst of my PTSD, when I was meditating like 3 hours a day, these voices would come to me. And one of them was this, what seemed like a little old man, not quite Yoda-esque, but you know, a little old man with long white hair who would give me suggestions. I said, well, have you considered this? And when I started paying attention and actually doing some of the things that he suggested, I found out they worked. Now, for the longest time, I assumed that I was just hearing voices and that there was something really wrong with me.
Yeah.
It wasn't so much alarming because life was so awful that anything that kind of took the edge off was okay. But pretty quickly I had to start questioning that, so I put it all down to kind of a psychological allegory.
Okay.
All right. But then I started reading some Mircea Eliade, who is the father of anthropological shamanism, if you will. He actually took all of these different surveys of shamanism as it appears among indigenous people all over the world, and cataloged how all these different things were in common. And of course, one of the theories that they had about this was that way back in the mists of time, when everybody lived in one little village in Northeast Africa, right? That village had had a shaman. And so as we migrated away and eventually propagated the entire globe, we all took our shamans with us. Well, the other theory, and this one I subscribe to, is simply this, that all of these shamans all over the globe, no matter what they call them, are all dealing with the same maps because they're dealing with the same territory.
Interesting.
That there actually are 3 worlds that are connected with perhaps not a world tree, but some kind of axis mundi, something that holds them together. And that we all have an inherent, innate capacity to hook into that because it's a part of the human experience. It's as much a part of the human experience as gravity is, as breathing, as eating. And so post-tribal shamanism is simply and specifically a movement to rediscover what these parts of the human experience are for us living in our culture here today. And I call it post-tribal because I want to be very clear. I have great respect for the elders and the people of the indigenous tribes and the indigenous forms of shamanism, which are still practiced all around the world today. And this is different. I make a point of not using any teachings that I've received from indigenous elders.
Oh, is that right?
Right, because that would be cultural appropriation.
Right.
And it's very important to avoid that. Now, some of the tools I use are gifted to me from various cultures around the world, but I use them somewhat differently, and I make sure not to pass on their medicine teachings, but to pass on the ones that I received from grandfather, which is what I tend to call the little old guy with the long white hair, who has continued to give me some wonderful teachings over the years that have saved my life and have gone on to help and heal many others.
Yes, let's talk about, you mentioned tools, and you each have tools that you use. And in fact, because you have so many fascinating things, we're going to do another show so that you can actually demonstrate, show us some of what you do. But let's right now just introduce some of the tools that you use in your work. Gene, if you want to talk about some of what's in front of us.
Sure. Well, I love quartz crystals because quartz crystals are silicon dioxide and what we grew the first computer chips from. So a clear quartz crystal is like a computer without an operating system and without software. And with our intention, we write the program, we write the software with our intention. So I like quartz crystals. And then you get to other stones like black tourmaline. Because it's black and it's grounded to the earth, we use a black stone like that to connect to the earth.
Okay.
And rhodochrosite, this one even looks like a heart.
It does. And they're beautiful. They're just beautiful pieces.
I love that aspect of them. I mean, there's more beauty out of the earth than I can ever make on my own, right? I can never paint this. This is just too luscious and the colors are too wild. So I love using the stones, and they tend to go with the body and the chakras. So the rhodochrosite's a really nice one I'm enjoying from Argentina, and it helps heal the heart. And the phenakite, which is a stone from Russia that's really hard to come by, that I just happen to get a bunch of here recently.
They're gorgeous.
And it's a very third eye, crown chakra expanding stone for helping us connect better with spirit. You know, just one of the tools I use to connect with those other worlds.
And intuitive healing, is that what you referred to this, or is that entirely
a lot of it
separate?
is
this a tool you use for that?
It is a tool I use in my intuitive healing.
Okay.
The rocks are helpers. They don't have the energy just to heal themselves, but they help us in doing what we need to do to
instruments,
help people.
so to speak, maybe.
Certainly, yes.
For lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And look at some of these beautiful pieces too. I mean, they're just behemoths, even though I know you've seen even more massive, as you've said, but these are just huge, beautiful pieces. What are some of the, I know there are many qualities of what's in front of us here?
Well, the biggest red one, or the biggest pink one there, is rose quartz from Madagascar. And rose quartz, again, another pink heart chakra stones. Amethyst from Brazil, which is a great stone for connecting to spirit and your crown chakra. And then more pink stones. This is pink tourmaline from Brazil. But the other one, the blue with the purples and the grays in it and the whites, that's a new stone that just came out last year called trollite.
A new stone, that's hard to imagine.
It actually comes from a granite mine in Bahia in Brazil.
Okay.
And it's a wonderful new stone. It's been out for a couple of years, and that's why I love this job. Every year there's a new stone. There's something new you have to share with people.
And so beautiful as well. Do you have, I don't want to say favorites, but are there particular crystals that you find yourself repeatedly drawn to? And do people tend to do that? Or?
Yeah, a lot of us do, and a lot of us, no one knows better than us what we need for ourselves if we pay attention to our intuition. So I'm drawn to the things I need to supplement that part of my chakra or that part of my being at a point in time. Like if I'm going through a tough time emotionally, I'll be drawn to heart stones to go ahead and support my heart. If I'm having a hard time deciding things, maybe I'm drawn more to third eye stones to help me come up with get in touch with my intuition. So it's just what I need in the moment. But I love phenokite. I jokingly call it nature's LSD because it's a stone that really expands our vision and our ability to tap into the unseen. So I like that aspect of it.
And when people first come to you, when you first meet people, maybe at the expo itself or what have you, when you're presenting your stones, your crystals, do you start conversations? Do people begin conversations with you, maybe talking about, well, you know, I'm having this issue, whatever issue, kind of seeking out, asking for a little guidance as they navigate their way to you?
Since I was in first grade, people have come to me. It's my whole life.
So you were meant to be doing this, ultimately.
I guess, but people have always come up and wanted to share their story with me and talk to me if I'm in an airport or something somewhere. So the stones give me a nice tool to help, because they talk about what's going on with them. I can often recommend a stone that will help support them in that process of getting in touch with whatever they got going on. But people always tend to talk to me about their stuff.
Right. So now you have the right tools, the right instruments to help them.
Or some, yeah.
Yeah. Ken, talk about, you have some fascinating pieces here that I know you
Well,
utilize.
these are just a few. I actually don't use a lot of in the way of tools in my regular work.
All right.
But sometimes when I'm called on to do ceremony, do ritual, it helps to have some extenders. You know, something to help ground your energy or extend your energy, or kind of like giving yourself a third hand.
Okay.
So these are a few of the pieces that I use more often. This is simply an offering bowl, and it's because, well, when you're going to set up a relationship with a spirit, it's kind of like developing a relationship with a human being. Okay. If you meet them at a party and you have good chemistry and you think, well, we should get together and talk, you know, and you don't talk to them for 6 months, and then you call them up and say, oh, by the way, I'm moving tomorrow, could you come over and help me with the heavy stuff? You know, it's probably not going to be the foundation of a lasting friendship.
Good point.
But if you make a point of connecting in with them the next day and bring them some flowers or a bottle of wine or a pack of beer, whatever seems appropriate.
Necessary gestures.
Exactly. And that's really all offerings are.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Whether it's for your ancestors or whether it's for nature spirits or your helping spirits, whatever spirits you're dealing with, they generally appreciate gratitude.
Interesting.
And so making an offering is simply a way of expressing that gratitude.
All right.
Now the stone with a hole in it is a stone with a hole in it.
It has a story, I'm sure.
Well, this one comes from the lovely stream that flows through Kenn in County Kerry in Ireland, which is one of our favorite places in the world. And I found this in June on our last tour there. But in general, holes, naturally occurring holed stones like this are seen as natural doorways between the worlds. And so this can be used in that offering bowl as a means of access to whatever spirits I'm going to be calling through. And then when I place offerings in there, they are present to receive that. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does make sense.
Okay. I'll just mention this one. This is a Paruta. Now it was carved, I believe, in Nepal, and this is a tool of the Bon shamans in Nepal and Tibet. I use it a little bit differently in that when I connect in with this, I have one of these here, obviously, and I have another one in my shamanic body. And the two come together and open up into the world tree, like so. And its roots reach down into the earth and below the earth into the underworld. Its limbs reach up above the sky. And in doing that, I can connect in with three worlds. Okay, so put that away. The bell is simply to connect with and summon spirits. And the double dorje I use for opening the one center, which is everywhere.
The one center.
Grandfather, my spirit ally, once told me, he said, you know, there's only one center. It just happens to be everywhere. That's the sort of kind of pithy statement that most of his teachings were based on. So it took me a while to grok that.
Okay.
But really, there is only one center. And it's in the center of every star, it's in the center of every stone, it's in the center of every one of our hearts, the center of every candle flame, at the center of every whole thing. That one center is the same center.
So it really is, I'm listening to each of you talk about, there is so much of healing, of focus and awareness, and truly just a sense, you know, very much nature, earth, even though it's different what you do, but you have these tools, instruments that are conduits, so to speak. Is that a fair term to connect to something, the center or something more? Does that make sense?
Go ahead, Gene.
For me, yes. For me, the working with the mineral kingdom, the stone people, is a way to connect to the earth and then connect to the all that is, to spirit. And it's all just conduit. And it doesn't matter whether it's, for me, whether it's the crystal or anything else. If it's a tool to help me focus and get myself to a place of aligned, I love what the Purva felt like when you put it in the hole. I love that alignment that happens. It's that connection to spirit.
It really
and you
is.
feel it when those things happen. And so it does, whatever tool, they're all amazing.
Right.
And it's all about connecting, I think, to that, to the life force, to spirit.
And I think a lot of that connection is really a matter of paying attention. And what we're paying attention to is that the world is a lot larger and a lot more interesting than just this stuff.
Right.
I mean, this is wonderful.
Right.
I am wild about the physical reality.
It's great, but
and
there's
it's only
more.
one part.
Right.
It connects us as well. I mean,
Right.
you know, one of the big problems in contemporary culture is people feel alienated and
Exactly.
disconnected from
Right.
the environment, from the earth, from one another. And these tools really provide a kind of a pathway to reconnect with something bigger than we are.
Absolutely.
And through doing that, our lives derive meaning,
purpose,
and
right?
our own abilities are amplified. And that's what the crystals do, isn't that right, Gene?
Right.
They amplify the power of your thoughts and intentions to do a certain thing, whether it's to heal. The rose quartz, I know I used to have a New Age shop where I sold lots of crystals, and so many women who had trouble with fertility issues would buy a rose quartz upon my recommendation, and the next time they came in, they said, guess what?
Is
I'm
that
pregnant.
right? Is
Yes.
that right?
So it increases, you know, and it's called the love stone, you know, so it's
Yes.
really good for relationships. But all of these things are tools to help us realize what we can do. We can do so much more than we were taught we could do
Right.
going through the educational system, you know,
Yes.
which tends to make us small,
Right.
you know. We have to live in a small box.
You have to be small
according
to
to
live
that
large with
system.
everyone else and
Exactly.
others.
So, you know, this is a way of breaking out of that and realizing life can be beautiful. It can be magical.
Right.
Yeah.
And to just kind of find your place in a quiet spot in a very large world, but a very central to you. That center. The center is everywhere. Within each, does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Totally.
When you find that one center, you've found your connection with everyone, with everything, with your ancestors, the earth, the divine, spirit, each other, yourself.
Right. It's all a very personal quest, search.
It's personal,
right?
and personal connection is the root of community. You know, for 70, 80,000 years, humans have lived in a certain way on the earth. And it's only been in the past few hundred years that has drastically changed. The whole experience of radical individuality that we have today, you know, the rugged individualist,
Right.
you know, that is a radically new invention
Right.
in in human society. And it's one of the reasons why post-tribal shamanism is important for us, because a lot of the techniques that are absolutely appropriate for a tribal culture aren't as good for somebody who's trying to maintain a healthy ego in our culture.
Okay.
I can see that. For me, on this whole connection piece with the stones and the tools and everything else, is I've never had two crystals that didn't get along. I've never had this stone when I tap into it say, I don't want to be next to that one. I don't want to work with that stone or that type of. When working
Yes.
with the natural elements,
Right.
I've never felt a sense of them wanting to be separate. They always kind of seem to build when you put them together. And it's the same way when Ken is talking about community. It's when we come together, we are so much more. And that community piece is so important. And the stones kind of, when we work with the stone energies, for me, I get that community sense that way. So.
And a real
Mike-
common thread, too, seems to be just a sense of peace that you find that people are seeking when they come to you, when they come to
What's so
the Expo.
interesting is it's already inside because we have so many kids that come to the Victory of Light Expo. And what are they gravitating towards? They run right to the crystals.
Oh, I'm sure,
They're
right?
beautiful, and each crystal has a geometry, a perfect molecular structure that it grows by. And we're naturally and instinctively attracted to that, but looking at the crystals, just looking at them, helps to clear the mind and tune us into the perfection of nature. And we're criticized so much in our worlds.
Right.
But in this world, everything's perfect. And we tune into that perfection and we realize we are what we are and we're perfect in what we are.
And it's very all-accepting, yes.
Very accepting,
Yes.
and that's one thing I'm really proud of with the Victory of Light Expo. The show's so inclusive. It doesn't say, you're not one of us, you're not good
Right.
enough, you're too old, or you're the wrong color. Everyone is welcome to Victory Light, and everyone feels a sense of family.
Right.
So it's kind of a microcosm of nature and how we all belong within its loving arms. So
Hence
it's
why
just
this is
that
the
in
23rd
itself.
year and more people keep coming because, yes, you're
get
onto
something
something.
out of it, yeah.
Absolutely onto something. Well, gentlemen, we have so much to look forward to in our next show with you because you're going to demonstrate. You're going to do a crystal grid. And Ken, are we going to call upon my ancestors?
We'll find out.
We'll see. So everyone has to tune in when my ancestors show up because I can only fathom. We may need an additional hour for that. I can only imagine they're every bit as loquacious. So everyone tune in. We'll be back and you're going to see some very exciting things with these wonderful gentlemen. Thanks so much for watching and we'll see you again on the next show.